Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys podcast, powered by HawkSoft. God, I love HawkSoft. My name is Scott Howell, your fearless host and leader, insurance agency owner and insurance evangelist for I Protect Insurance and Financial Services, based out of Huntsville, Alabama. And before we get started on today's episode, please help me welcome. He is a 6'3" sophomore from Mobile, Alabama. Parade first team All-American, Rivals 5-star recruit. He is a fantastic insurance agent and a great American. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the incomparable Mr. Bradley Flowers. How are you, Bradley?
I'm great. I'm great.
In-person guest today.
Yeah,
I'm not used to this. It's kind of weird. Guys, we're excited to be here today. Bradley, I came down to Mobile, drove down here last night to tell you one thing. I am more than willing to take on your nanny role for you.
Okay.
I'm just going to go ahead and get out of the insurance business.
You'll be the Manny.
I'll be a Manny. That's right. So where are you with that? Look, I think the most important and most selfish question that I can ask you is, how is this nanny or lack thereof situation going to affect our podcasting tomorrow? Because you said on the text message, we're good for Monday. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to be here on Tuesday too.
So part of the problem is, like I said on an earlier podcast a few weeks ago, and hopefully by the time this podcast released, I found one. But you know, when Luke was born, you know, we were like, hey, you know, both Laurel and I run businesses. We both make good money. Like, let's not do daycare. Let's hire a professional person.
Sure.
The problem is when you hire one person and something happens to that one person, you're screwed.
It's like having one big insurance account.
Yeah, exactly. So our problem now is the nanny quit with no notice.
Was that a personality conflict or just something happened, or did Luke pick a damn apple up and hit her in the head with it or something?
No, it was nothing to do with him. She was an older lady. I feel like if I don't tell the story, people are going to assume Luke's like Chucky or something. She was an older lady who didn't have to work.
Yeah.
She lived in a very nice senior community that was income based. So
she's kind of over it.
Her fixed income, bills, or retirement, that sort of thing. She was doing it just because she wanted to. So I think she was getting some familiar pressure,
right?
Like, hey, from her family, like, hey, you don't have to do this. Why are you doing this? Because Laurel and I, man, we've got a schedule. Like, we do some stuff.
Trust me. I know.
And it's hard on whoever does it with us. And
by the way, you are recording this podcast.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. I just want to make sure.
And me and Rand are.
Okay.
So she was getting some pressure from them, and then she had surgery May the 9th, and ended up going to the hospital and was out 2 months. Was out the whole summer. Fortunately, during the summer, college kids are home, so we had a lot of college kids watching him, that sort of thing. It was actually great. Some of them were awesome. And then she came back, and I think she was getting some pressure while she was out not to come back. And she came back, and the first day she came back, she got COVID. And we gave it to her unbeknownst to us that we had it. Matter of fact, by the time she tested positive, we were already over it 2 days later, And so I think they used that as an excuse of like, see, and I think her kids said, hey, you don't need to do this anymore. Yeah. So that was kind of the reason. So it's tough, man. We haven't found anybody. Everybody's like, oh yeah, I can do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but only 2 hours on Monday, 4 hours. It's just tough. So tomorrow, worst case scenario, I'll have Shelby, my assistant, watch him out in the lobby while we're here, but I think Laurel's going to keep him. So sorry for the very long answer, but I feel like I owed everyone an explanation as to what happened.
I think that is the perfect segue into my nanny story.
Okay. What?
When I was in the 9th grade, my sister had a nanny, babysitter, that my parents hired because my sister was only like 3 years old. And it might have been the sweetest woman I've ever met in my life. Her name was Ruby Mays. And for those of you listening out there that maybe grew up Church of Christ, there was a camp in Hamilton, Alabama. And I've had people ask, and I did not grow up Church of Christ, but these this camp, I've had people from all over the United States say, "You're from Hamilton, Alabama. Do you know what Maywood Christian Camp is?" Wow. It's a Church of Christ church camp, and she lived right down the road from that church camp, and she was one of the sweetest ladies I have ever seen in my life. I'm gonna make this story short because I got an all-star guest I got to bring on. One day, she pulls up to the house, and we had this big, long, tall driveway that was like 60 degrees. And she pulls up, and I just happened to be walking out to my mom's car. My mom taught school, and I would ride to school with her. And as I'm walking out, I hit the screen door to the garage, carport. We had an open-air carport, and I hit the screen door and walked outside to go get in the car. Ruby's just pulled up. You know, same thing as always. She gets out of her car, and she starts walking towards me. And I said, "Hey, Ruby, how are you?" "Good, Scott, good." She's got her purse, walks in the house. And just about the time she got even with me to walk in that screened-in door, I look, and her damn wheels on her car are moving, her tires. Y'all, she is now in the house as I watch her 1986
Cutlass
baby shit brown Toyota Corolla start rolling off the damn hill of our driveway. You can't make this shit up. And I stood there. That driveway was probably 75 yards long going downhill. I stood there for 10 seconds, and I watched that Corolla roll straight down our driveway, across the road and into the woods and disappear. And now I'm standing there by myself. My mom's still in the house. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, I got to go tell that bitch her damn car just rolled in the woods. So I turn around and I walk back in the screen door, and she's like standing in the living room, putting her purse down. And
she probably thought you were messing with her.
And I said, "Miss Ruby, I don't know. I'm a freaking ninth grader. Ninth grader ought not have to do this." I said, "Miss Ruby, I don't know how to tell you this, but your car's down there in the woods." And she just looks at me, and she goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I just watched your car roll down our driveway, and it just went lost down into the woods. I don't know what. I don't know after that." She kind of speed walks outside. Sure enough, her damn car ain't sitting there no more. That some bitch is in the woods. And so, of course, we were running late to school after that because we had to call like the damn police and the record service and all that. But man, that was wild.
There's only one thing you could say after that. Nationwide is on your side.
I don't know who she had her insurance with, but I just remember standing there watching that car.
She probably had Alpha.
Probably.
If I had to bet.
I would bet so too. Guys, we got a rock star guest for you today. Major breaking news in the insurance industry. Turn your radio up. You guys are going to want to listen to this podcast today, and I want to give him the introduction he's always deserved. He is originally from Lexington, Kentucky, and he currently resides in Tallahassee, Florida. He's a seasoned marketplace entrepreneur and the co-founder and CEO at Cake. With a strong background in building digital marketplaces, he and his co-founder are building a first-of-its-kind transactional marketplace in the insurance industry. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor today to introduce to you first-time guest on the IGP, Mr. Adam Bowe. How are you, Adam?
Man, I am so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to be your Manny tomorrow.
Oh,
that's
awesome.
why I'm in person.
Okay.
That's
Perfect.
why I'm in person.
Scott, if Scott was the Manny, Luke's first sentence would probably be something about the shitbird client or something like that.
Yeah, no, that about 1,000% that would happen. So,
you're one of the rare guests that gets the in-person.
Dude, I'm excited. You gave me the option.
It's been
never had one here, have we?
Not in this studio. Mm-hmm. We did Ricky Carruth in person.
Mm-hmm. The CEO of Health South. That was
the guy from Health South, yeah. And then we did. I think that was probably the last one we did in person.
Panini Pete.
Did Panini Pete? That was the same session. Mm-hmm. So that Panini Pete, the guy from Health South, that was 2021. It's been 2 years since we had an in-person guest, not counting like when we're on the road.
Well, you gave the offer, and I said I got to be here. You know, I'm 3 hours straight shot on I-10, and I said I need the shot, man.
Man, I appreciate it. I've had people, dude, I've had people that were much closer than you opt to stay in their office. And I'm like, and I told you, I was like, dude, you can do either, but it's going to be a lot better if you come in person.
Yeah, man, you get the video content. We get to go out to dinner later. You know, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
I'm going to take y'all to a it's a local place that it's an Irish pub. It's called McDonald's.
Okay.
So, I'm joking.
Am I going to get in a cuss fight with the waitress?
No.
Hey, Bradley, before we get started, I got so many questions for Adam today. Did you register us to get investigated by the Guinness Book of World Records for?
I did.
Have they reached back out?
Not yet. No. Scott and I were on a. Yeah, this
I forgot about that. We were on that big.
We were on AM Best TV, which apparently AM Best has a podcast called AM Best TV, and
it's an interesting name for
Scott
a podcast.
Made a joke. Do what?
Interesting name for a podcast.
Yeah, Scott made a joke and said, I think me and Bradley broke the Guinness Book of World's. What was our most we did?
I want to say 16. I have to go back and look.
Podcasts in a day.
Yeah.
And it hit me when he said that.
Might have been a 2-day period though.
It hit me when it was at least 11 in a day. I think it was 16 in 2 days.
No,
it was 11 in 1 day.
Yeah, it was more than that. I want to say it was 13.
That's got to be a record.
But I'll look back on the calendar. But anyway, he was like, when he said that, I was like, wait a minute. Like, why don't I register us for a Guinness Book? So, best case scenario, they get back to me and say, yeah. And I looked up podcasts. There's none for most podcasts done in a day. There's one for the most listeners live, which was like 100,000. But so either they'll say, yes, you've got it, or the better option is they'll say, you got to do it again.
Yeah.
And we make this big to do about it.
Right.
So that's going to happen.
Oh, like they have to be there for it or something.
Yeah.
Come on with it,
send
folks.
The rep in. I think you have to pay for that, but I mean, dude, like in my lobby out here, could you imagine having a Guinness Book of World Records
That's got to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So Adam, I've got so many questions for you. First and foremost, welcome to Mobile, Alabama. Thank you for being with us today. I have been hearing about the company that you have built for some time, but Bradley has told me about what it is and what you're doing, and I think these agents will all be wildly interested in this. I have not said anything to anybody about it. I don't remember if Bradley told me not to or not, but I've kind of waited on this moment.
Yeah.
So talk to our audience today a little bit about what Cake is, what you guys are building, and then I'll step in with questions as you're doing that. But I think they need to know first because they probably think it's some kind of online homeowners quoting platform or something.
Yeah. No, well, first of all, I mean, I'm a sucker for a good name. My first job was at Big Ass Fans, and so
really,
yeah. So ever since then, I was like, I gotta have a memorable name, dude. I was a cold caller, and they dropped me off for like 3 months in Dallas, Texas.
What the hell is Big Ass Fans?
You don't know what Big Ass Fans is?
No.
Really big ass fans.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, like 24 foot.
I love names that are just so obvious.
Exactly.
It's a big metal, like a big metal cross, and it just goes.
Yeah.
You ever seen that?
Yeah, I have. In like airports.
Me and Laurel were in Southeastern Salvage.
Yeah.
Just here in Mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked up, and I said, this is how I discovered that company. I said, that's a big ass fan. I was like, oh, that's the name.
Literally,
yeah. And so what's funny is they have like a PG version.
Yeah, they've got it's called the no ass package.
Yeah. And they sell it to like churches and stuff.
Okay.
You know where that came from, and I may be making this up, but I was there when this happened. Is Chip and Joanna Gaines?
Mm-hmm.
Joanna does not like cuss words, and we outfitted their whole little commune place in Baylor or near Baylor University, and she wanted the no ass package. So like invoices, boxes, like ass doesn't show up anywhere. But so I'm sucker for a good name. So that's where Cake came from, and there's reasons for why that is. But basically, at its core, man, it's an M&A marketplace built for independent agents to play both roles. I think that's what makes us different, right? Like the M&A activity within this space is what got me interested. I came from manufacturing, right? We built a marketplace in manufacturing, and can talk a little bit about our journey there. But met an agent. He had sold his agency, was really interested in that process, was like, holy cow, that multiple's huge, like how do people sell this, right? And then started to figure out, hey, if you're a $5 or a $10 million agency, right, ARR, annual revenue, you can sell to Acrisure at a hub tomorrow. But there's this huge section that's smaller,
which
right?
is the majority of the industry.
83.7% make less than 1.25 million. Wow. And like the breakdowns actually are really interesting, right? Like that's 83 total.
1.25 million EBITDA or gross revenue?
Revenue.
Okay.
Gross right.
Revenue, yeah.
And then the numbers underneath that, 22% are 500K to 1.25 million. And then 24% are 150K to 500K. And 38% make less than $150,000 in revenue. And shout out to Kerry Wallace for those data points.
I knew as soon as you were in the middle, I was like, he got these exactly from. Yeah, but I think there needs to be a solution for the agencies in that 83%.
Yeah, and if you talk to them though, like they don't ultimately want to sell to a hub or an Acrisure, right?
Yeah.
And you talk to a lot of agents like Bradley, in one of your recent podcasts, you were like, I'll buy everybody, right? Yeah. And like that's consistent. Like a lot of agents want to grow, right. And a lot of agents want to sell to someone that's independent like them, that looks like them, that walks like them, treats their customers like them, and that there's really not been a place for those two parties to meet, and to meet and analyze the books and normalize data sets that are speaking insurance metrics about books of business metrics, right? Like really building this for agents, not for PE groups that are looking to get in and acquire. And that's what Cake wants to do.
One of the things you see too amongst normal agents like us in some of these Facebook groups, the most popular question around M&A is, how do you find agencies for sale? There's not a good solution in our industry. Yeah. So which is why I fell in love with you guys when you first came across my desk. Like, this is, because I've seen it in other industries, right? It exists in the SaaS world.
Yeah.
What's that? Is it
Acquire.com?
Acquire.com, where you can buy a SaaS company and they're completely vertically integrated from start to finish, make it super easy. In fact, I almost bought an AI-driven blog company.
Just to churn out content?
Just to churn out content, and it was super cheap. I think they wanted like $15,000 or $30,000, but they were doing that much in revenue. And I almost bought it, and I got distracted. And
it was gone.
2 weeks later, ChatGPT launched.
Oh.
I was like, oh my goodness, I'm glad I did not do that. That would have just completely talk about
set it on fire. Yeah.
Which the story of that would probably be worth more than $30,000.
Yeah.
But
So. You just mentioned it, Bradley, but I want to get back to it as well. So let's say I'm an agency that wants to buy or sell. How much of the work behind the scenes is being done by Cake to kind of get this thing packaged up to say, here you go.
What's that process look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple things. I think it looks different now than it will in probably the next 6 to 12 months. So one of my like core tenets is, you mentioned I'm from Kentucky, right? Came from manufacturing. I think when a lot of folks in the tech world are coming to like more like pillar industries, right? They're like, there's like a savior mentality, right? Like, hey, you guys have been doing it wrong for 150 years, and we know how to do exactly what you should do, right? And we're going to solve all your problems. And then what they don't do is get into the weeds with the folks, and then they look like idiots, and it doesn't work, right? And so, you were saying you've heard about Cake for a while. I think our process that we've been doing, right, is getting with agents. So, like, I've talked to Bradley a ton. Kerry Wallace isn't an agent, but she sits next to him all the time. The whole hit list, Chris Paradiso, Daniel Song, but then anyone also that'll talk to us and trying to learn the weeds. And so the process right now, what we can do, and my co-founder, John, he was the head of data and algorithms at Xometry, which will give you an instant price quote on a CAD file drawing, right? So NASA, SpaceX, Ford, Department of Defense, like big projects, right? And so we're doing something similar here where we're doing an AI book of business valuation tool. And I think that's the first step, right? The multiples, it's rumor based, right now,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
And the reason that is, again, I don't think it's the agent's fault, right? The data that gets reported is for the big deals, right? And none of the deals that happen at the size we're talking about, there's no Zillow where you can go and check your valuation over time, or like track what you're doing in Neon, right? And say, hey, I've increased my valuation over time because I added a bathroom, right? Or I increased my retention rate. And so there's none of that. And so the rumors happen because it's a word of mouth industry that everyone's pretty close. And so you hear what happens. And then the deals that get reported are totally different than the deals we're talking about. So we want to kind of level set that data through valuations.
You also have two things going on, too, in those situations. One, you've got this agency owner that's sold, whose, in a lot of cases, entire self-worth is wrapped up into this agency.
Yeah.
They're going to exaggerate that number to their buddies.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, people forget about earnout. You know, a lot of times what's reported is, here's cash up front, best case scenario earnout.
It's like the
but
NFL
it's bundled
contracts.
into one.
Right.
You know, it's like the NFL contracts. You know,
Correct.
like what's the guaranteed money?
Correct.
You know, talk to me
Exactly.
guaranteed money.
Exactly.
Sure.
And that's, to me, as someone who's been aggressively trying to acquire the last few years.
Well, hello there. Excuse me for interrupting your regularly scheduled podcast, but I'm here today to get you out of Aggregator and cluster jail. This may be the most important message I've ever delivered on the Insurance Guys podcast. Guys, are you a member of a cluster or an aggregator? Does your contract have exit fees, termination payments, buyback provisions? It's time to get your freedom back and do what we did here at iProtect Insurance. Join the AC, the future of aggregators and clusters in our industry. Best decision we've ever made, guys. Best decision we've ever made. No entry fees, small $200 a month membership fee, over 50 plus carriers for direct appointments. And by the way, adding new ones coming on board with them each and every month. You keep 100% of your commissions and profit sharing every year. Guys, each of the last 2 years, we have made in our agency over $100,000 in profit sharing. And wait, here's the best part. This is the part I'm probably the most passionate about. No termination or exit fees. You give the AC 60 days notice and you're free. You get direct appointments wherever you want. There's no buyback provisions, no exit clauses. Guys, if you're a member of another aggregator and you have termination fees, buyback provisions, exit clauses, every single policy you write, you're digging that hole just a little bit deeper. And one day you're not going to be able to get out of it. It's going to be too much. You're going to be taking out a second mortgage on your home just to try to get out of an aggregator or cluster group. Unbelievable. Go to acfree.org. That's acfree.org and register. Find out why over 850 agencies and $3 billion in premium have chosen the AC. But wait, guys, there's more. Heck, this may be the best part. Mention the Insurance Guys podcast when you talk to these guys, and you get 6 months. That's 6 months of no membership fee just by mentioning the Insurance Guys podcast.
A lot of people in the $100,000 to $500,000 in revenue range have a little bit of an unreal multiple expectation.
Yeah.
And like, oh yeah, okay, you might get 4x at an Acrisure or a Hub, but that's assuming you completely maximize your earn out.
Yeah,
and it's like best case scenario. And what's going to end up happening is 2.5.
And not many people are getting 4x anywhere,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
and
Right.
and even 2.5 is that's a really good agency, you know, and I think you know what we want to do is one, normalize the data both when you're analyzing the books, right, and the valuations and how you're like doing the discovery. And so what Cake does, we allow you to create what we call slices, right, and that's portions of your book of business that all add up to be your full book. and we can value those. Right now, that tool's in beta right now, and I kind of go back to our us learning the industry. What we've done is we've partnered with folks that do these valuations, right? Like Carrie. Shout out Carrie Wallace. She's a saint on this earth.
So you guys aren't making. I think if I'm an agent who's skeptical, I'm listening to this and thinking, oh, this is some tech guy that's coming in here with his algorithm. You guys are taking Carrie's process for evaluating an agency and building that into your algorithms.
Yeah,
right?
Carries and additional data that we've collected. Like you look at the NAICS reporting on the financial reports. A dog is gone. Yeah, crazy. Yeah. You go, NAICS does financial reports and like market share data. It's important to know where the carrier's active in that region, right? You look at the number of agents on like the buying market locally, right? You also want to, we're planning on layering in things like, average home value in that area, right? Like the disaster reports of weather, right? All of that stuff. It goes into premium a little bit, but it's also like longevity, like what's the population look like there, right? So, but it's mainly insurance metrics focused from insurance people that have done these valuations, right? And then, you normalize that data and allow for discovery. And then you open up private chat features and deal rooms to be able to exchange that, like the book of business report, right? Or the carrier report. All that's, NDA, enclosed so that you can kind of keep it private. I think that's another thing that's really important is agents don't want to be seen as selling until they're kind of ready to sell, and so you don't have your name attached to a listing until you find someone that's actually interested and you want to move forward with it. But Scott, what we're planning on doing is, right now we can give you an estimated valuation and then offer our services for increasing that through Carrie and some other folks, right? And then we help you inload the book up, and there's buyers on there right now. We officially launched 9/1, which I think the podcast will be out after this. But we officially launched 9/1, but there's already buyers on there, kind of drooling to get some sellers on. And then we help you move into a deal room, and that's where I think it's important to highlight our team. What we're trying to do is we're trying to be a sponge and learn. So we know the puzzle that is the M&A, transaction, right? You need an LOI, you need to exchange the book report, the carrier report.
Sure.
You need to have a buy-sell agreement, the standard earn-out periods, right? And you can kind of help give that guide. But then we're also working as we see a few of those transactions take place, what can we productize and what can we automate? And then what still needs that personal touch, right? And so, we're new and there's still things to be built. But I think we're building it the right way by talking to agents, by sitting in the transaction and saying, hey, you get white glove service, and I'm blood, sweat, and tears right now, and we're building this thing. So yeah, we're excited to hit the market and get started.
So that's sort of a seller's perspective, right? I list my book of business. Nobody knows who I am until it's matched up. You go into a room, so to speak, virtually, or I guess in person.
It's the deal room's virtual, but you're able to like. It's similar if you ever kind of heard founders talk, right? Like I've got to have a data room when I'm getting any sort of outside investment, right? To send to them for them to be able to like go through my data, and you want to have something that's structured, consistent, right? Kind of industry standard, and then you just give access to that room. And I think it removes a lot of the fear and uncertainty on the seller side, because a lot of these folks, if they're talking to a PE firm and they're like, what's your EBITDA, and maybe they're not running the either the correct P&L, right? Because there's some people try to bastardize kind of standard P&Ls for insurance, or they don't have a really clean P&L, or
they had to Google EBITDA before.
I think everyone knows that's a financial acronym now, but like not everyone kind of knows what goes into that. And so, I think what we want to do is respect independent agents as the entrepreneurs that they are, right? And say, look, we're not talking PE language here. Let's talk insurance language and get down into the metrics that are important for a buyer who is another independent agent to know how they're going to ingest that book of business. in that transaction.
So the other side of that, if I'm a buyer, take me through the buyer's journey.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the
as
buyer
it stands today, with, we'll do a future podcast. And update you guys on the journey. But as it stands today, kind of what's that look like?
I think what buyers get is, you were talking about the multiple rumors, right? And like what people expect to see. I think when a seller is uploading their book into a marketplace with other books, they can compare and contrast a little bit, and it helps to level set and to create a market naturally where you can't really ask for 4x when everyone else is getting 2.5 or 2x, right? And then buyers also, I think one of the features that we're launching within the next month is a buyer profile. And so one of the things that we want to keep in this transaction, right, is, I think this is such a personal touch industry, right, that anytime you're talking about automation or technology, sometimes it gets a little scary. Well, like, how do I keep that personal touch? We want buyers to be able to tell their stories. Like we've got a guy in Des Moines, Iowa, who's like, hey, whenever I get someone on a phone doing a transaction, I know I've won because I say, do your employees have healthcare right now? No. Well, I offer healthcare and I cover half of it, right? I give them equity. And so he gets to describe that process. And you said before the podcast started, there's so many different ways to win, I think what buyers get to do is present the deal they're looking for, like one of the things we haven't really touched on is this fractional transactions, which is going to be interesting to see how agents kind of utilize that.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so like for example, there's another buyer that says if you have a single surety line, right, I'll buy it. If you've got 5, I'll buy it. Commercial trucking, that's another one. There's these weird lines.
Personal lines. There's a lot of people selling their personal lines.
Yeah, personal lines. Like, maybe you've got non-standard, right? And a lot of people say, I won't, like you said, if it's non-standard nationwide, you'd love it, right?
Yeah.
Like, some people say that, like, and say that's not real. You don't want that. But there is folks that take non-standard because they know they can get a little bit of a deal on it, right? And they trust their process, and they're like, look, I've got a pretty good, back end here, and I'm used to it.
A lot of people shy away from E&S. I'll take it all day long. Like I'll put us up against any agency in the world in E&S.
Yeah. So I think personal lines on the fractional side, there's still some things to be solved. Like, what does the non-compete look like if you're selling, just if you've got monoline home, but like you had their auto with somebody else, right? Like that's a weird scenario.
To me, that's where selling a book of business for a carrier gets weird, is when you have a home with, and you see that more and more across the industry where you have monoline home and then the autos with a carrier on monoline auto. And that's to me where it gets weird.
But I think commercial, especially niche commercial, it's a little cleaner. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting because, when you look at it, it's not something that, because a lot of transactions, what happens is they'll buy the full book, the full agency, right? And then they'll say, man, 15% of this,
they really wanted the Liberty book.
Yeah, they're like, I don't give a shit about 15% of this. And so they either give it away or just, don't renew it, right? But that could go to a buyer who really wanted that, right? And so I think this fractional transaction, the slices, it allows an agent to maximize the value of each piece of their book, right? And also I look at the buyer. So you were talking about the buyer journey. Buyers' access to capital right now, like if you didn't make acquisitions kind of in the free-for-all, a couple of years ago, and you put a little piggy bank away, you're sitting in a great spot to be able to buy agencies because there's going to be a lot of acquisition opportunities. If you don't have capital sitting away, one way to access capital is to slice off a piece of your book that is not something that fits kind of your strategic vision of your growth over the next couple of years. Sell that and reinvest it into another slice that's on the platform. And so really what we want to do is give optionality and control back to independent agents to control when they sell, how they sell, right? But also how they grow. I think inorganic growth is really attractive, especially in this market.
So imagine this. Consider this scenario. Pick a carrier.
Travelers.
Okay, let's say you need another $500,000.
Favorite scenario,
Travelers this year to hit contingency. they have a $700,000 Travelers book. You go buy that book. Make
You're
sure
buying
you
it
work
at
it out with
dimes on the
Travelers
dollar.
first. But you're buying the real estate at 60 cents on the dollar because, let's say you're paying a 1.5, 2 times multiple, but really you're getting 5 because you hit bonus. That's where this gets really strategic, is being able to look like right now we're looking for a Progressive book for the exact same reason.
Yeah.
Because Progressive is not competitive where we are at all for homes. So if I can find a book that's bundled, I can hit bonus the same way.
When you say Georgia and North Carolina, where were you looking?
Pretty much where I'm looking is draw a line down the center of the United States vertically, everything to the right, subtracting New England and Florida. That's pretty much.
And Louisiana.
And Louisiana.
Hey, Bradley, I got a question for you. You've been bullish on buying a book of business for really the past year. And you've looked at a lot of them. You've, dated or whatever. And it doesn't, I don't know, have any of them come to fruition? And if not, why has it been so? Because I think that information to them is huge, because you're like, well, I'm doing this on my own right now, and here's the issues I'm seeing.
So there's a few things, and that's actually a good question because I think the listeners can get something out of this. There's been a few of them I've lost because I didn't think the person was as serious as they are. Most of those didn't get to the point of a P&L on my desk. There was one recently that I lost that would have been a slam dunk that I didn't think the guy was serious, and then he ended up selling it for a super low multiple. There's been a few that I've lost because the person wanted too much. There was one guy I talked to that I really wanted, had an auto owner's contract, which that was the reason I was interested. And he wanted, I think, 4 times, and this was a $200,000 revenue agency. And so I'm sitting there in his office trying to decide, okay, am I going to be the one who tells him and risk him getting pissed off at me? Or am I going to play it slow and act like I'll pay that and then let somebody else be the bad guy, and then he comes back?
I do think it's interesting that you keep coming back to size, though, on multiple, because for me it's like, and again, this is one of the things that's really important for us is just being a sponge and learning, right? But to me, if you strictly look off size, you're limiting yourself a little bit, because what if it's a 200,000 book that's home, right? But the average home value is 180,000 versus a $200,000 book on home that is a $500 to $1 million home, right? Well, like those look a little different, and they like, what's the loss ratio historically on the book, right? Like, and so to me, like, size, and this is where slices I think become a little bit attractive, right? If you can start to drill down to like the data points that you need to start to imagine that in your book, then size becomes less of the kind of the judge, and it's more, I love your metric. If I took this dollar and invested in marketing, could I get this client, right? And could I get the client that makes the most sense for my book? Or am I going to get, a mix of clients? And so it's really...
Well, that's kind of how I looked at that one.
Yeah.
Because 4 times on 200,000 in revenue, that's $800,000.
Yeah, it's got to be really good clients.
We add $2 million in new premium if we add $2 million in new premium this year in the agency, I'm going to be pissed. Like, our goal is much bigger. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but that one I lost, and then I had another deal. What happens is you get an LOI on some of these deals, and then all your attention goes to that one, and then you miss some opportunities along the way. And that the deal with the person who wanted too much, then they end up selling to someone else for less. That's happened to me twice. And then I had one that it was a book of business. It was a trucking book that made it all the way down to the day before closing. And my due diligence is my strategy is, let's get an offer in your hands as fast as possible and then do due diligence, not the other way around. Went all the way through the due diligence, everything checked out. Day before closing, the seller backed out. I can't say why, I'm under an NDA, but it was nothing to do with me.
Right.
And then I've got one now that is bigger than all of those, maybe combined, that I think is going to sign the LOI. Indicated to me last week he's going to sign the LOI. So that's kind of the story.
Yeah. Here's my question to Adam. My question is this. Do you feel like you'll have more agencies sign up as sellers that are entire agencies or more fractional agencies?
Yeah, man, I love this question. So I think it's we're gonna have two waves, right? So 17% of agency principals right now are 66 or older. The average age is 54, right? And the cohorts we were talking about, the size of revenue, 66% of the total book for that cohort is managed by older producers. So those are smaller agencies on the revenue side, and that's the largest percentage by cohort, right? And so I think what's going to happen, this is across industries, right? They're calling it the silver tsunami or the great wealth transfer, right? You got a lot of baby boomers retiring.
Sure.
So I think early you're going to see more book, the full agency or full book sales, right? Now, what's interesting there, right, is does it go to multiple buyers at once, right? Or does someone prefer to ingest the whole agency? And so I think there's still a place for the fractional. But for the most part, it's going to be full agency, full books, right? You have, the folks that are looking to retire. And then you also have, unfortunately, I think scratch agencies that founded a year or two ago that can't write new business, right, and say, man, this shit's for the dogs. Like, I got to get out, and I'd like some cash to get out. So you've got, two ends, right? The people that are at the end of their career, and then the folks that just bad timing, I think.
Unfortunately, I think we're about to have a lot of that.
Yeah, and me too. I do as well. But then I think the next cohort, right, is, and again, this is a hypothesis at this zone, but when you talk to agents, I think that you start to see folks that are buyers and sellers. And so they're optimizing their book kind of strategically around niches, around carriers, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm a buyer or a seller and I want to get started with you guys, what do I need to do?
Yeah. So, I mean, right now until 9/1, well, I guess this will be after 9/1. I was going to say
we're going to try to release it right at the
cool. Well,
I want this to be like launch day.
Yeah, so accounts are free in September, right? And so what we want is for folks to come on. And so
free for sellers or buyers?
Both. Okay. Yeah, so come on, meet and greet, right? So create your account. If you're a seller, what you do is you create a listing, right? And I'll post my cell phone, my email, my Zoom link, whatever. Anybody that wants to talk to me that needs help, we've also got a seller success team that can help there. But it's fairly straightforward, right? We need carrier, we need total premium, number of customers, number of policies, and the state that it's in, right? And the goal of the listing is to be interesting enough for a buyer to reach out and want to start that conversation. Then you move into that private chat. But yeah, so accounts are free, super easy to create them. If you want to create a listing, then you go on, and it's not tied to your name, right? It's tied to a username on the platform, and you can start to see offers coming in from buyers,
when
right?
you see Insurance Granny 69, it's Scott.
Yeah, exactly.
Does the buyer get a profile, or does the buyer?
Yeah, so the buyers aren't visible to the sellers yet. Now that buyer profile is coming at the end of September, right?
Okay.
And that is where one of the things that we also want to be able to offer is for sellers that are very interested in working with, either a buyer locally or someone they know of, right? Or someone whose story resonates with them, right? They can submit their offer kind of directly to that buyer. But the buyers get to see the listings right now. Then you get to open the chat, request to move to a deal room, and then that's when you get into the LOI, right? It's NDA, locked to get in there, and you can start to exchange.
The deal's locked down at that point.
Yeah, I think. Well, it's that's you're getting into home. You're heading into home. Some deals fall apart, right? Like, but then we've got third-party services that we'll layer in from a legal and accounting standpoint.
And then also financing as well.
Yeah, and the financing side, we're still locking that in.
Yeah.
I've got a meeting with a few of the folks that you're probably thinking of over the next 2 weeks to lock that in, but. What we want to offer is financing for buyers to kind of aggregate the demand on the finance side to get them locked in on good deals, good rates.
I have two questions that I know people listening are thinking.
Yeah.
One, I've asked you this before. What prevents the big boys from coming in and just buying everybody?
Yeah.
And then two, how do you make money?
Yeah. So honestly, we've talked to the big boys, and they're really not that interested in acquiring. What they're interested, I think, in is watching a little bit, you know, and like, again, I think the agency that starts at 1.25 million and then, you know, smartly acquires over 5 years to get to 8, that agency is a lot more interesting to the big boys than the smaller transactions happening kind of all at once. And so I think they're not unaware, right? But they're actively, you know, uninterested and kind of competing.
A lot of those guys have locked down their M&A activity too.
Yeah, they're really not acquiring nearly as much as, again, that's a rumor-based thing where it's like, well, I could sell to Hub or Accusure, and it's like, well, they're really not buying that many people right now. But so, you know, I think nothing keeps the big boys, but what we do as product designers, right, is we build our products for the folks that need and will use them the most, right? So this leads into like how we make money too. Is, you know, if I'm launching a financing option, right? Well, I'm going to want a little piece of that pie that I'm passing it through. Well, Accusure is not going to create any sort of financing for a deal through me, right? And so you build products for independent agents that are going to be buying. And so our full focus is facilitating independent agents playing both roles of this.
Yeah.
Right now it's a subscription fee, so $39.99. And again, you know, September it's free. But when we're actually launching our transaction engine, which is probably Q1, Q2 next year, this is where you can check out, track the performance of that deal over time, always go back and reference and exchange that money actually taking place on that platform. You know, then we're taking a little cut of the transaction itself.
The data you're going to have a year in is going to
I mean,
the data you're going to have 5 years.
You look at it's a Zillow, right? And it's like you're able to track that.
Agents, right?
Yeah, but Scott, you were asking,
I would almost
like,
position it that way.
Yeah, well, you're asking like services. Like, man, we're helping agents like structure their data correctly. So email me directly your book of business report, right? And I'll clean it up so it looks better and buyers can see it, right? We're working on data transfer, so actually cleaning up the book from the seller so that the buyer can ingest it. So there's a lot of things right now that we'll do to help sellers and buyers so that we can kind of explore what makes sense from a product perspective and, you know, what we want to launch over the next year, because again, this is designed specifically for the independent agents.
And it's very apparent, like, that's the case. Just to be honest with you, that's not me saying that like you're not paying us anything. Like, we've known each other
besides a T-shirt.
Besides a T-shirt that I forgot to put on and Scott did. You know, we've talked a couple times a month for about a year now.
Yeah.
And it's very apparent where you guys are focused, where you're headed, just based on who you have in your stable.
Yeah.
You're working with Albie Knight, Kerry Wallace.
Shout out 101 Western Labs. What an accelerator, man. That was awesome.
You know, that's been one of the more interesting things I've done, being on their advisory committee. I just kind of said yes because it was Albie.
Yeah.
But I've had more people reach out and say, "Man, I saw you're in on 101 Western Labs. That's awesome," than I ever expected. So it's awesome. And you know, it's funny with this, man. You know, one thing I've talked about on the podcast before is if you look at other industries, you can almost predict what's going to happen in yours. You know, an analogy I've given is the fashion industry. If you go to Europe, you're going to see some weird fashion that you're like, that's stupid. But then eventually it makes...
What do you call the Lululemon pants?
Yeah, exactly.
Fancy pants?
Fancy pants.
Yeah.
Eventually it makes its way over here.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the same thing if you look at tech or you look at industries that tend to be pushing the envelope. You can almost predict what's going to happen in the insurance industry. And allows you to kind of see things.
Well,
and Carrie and I had a conversation about Kate because we saw acquire.com and we're like, that's going to happen in our industry. And to some people, that may, if we don't tell that side of it, like, man, how'd you guys know this was going to happen? Like, because it happened in the tech world first.
I think what's important, though, is that you don't just port over tech to an industry. Like, you got to take the time, especially insurance, man. Like, my head is spinning from the last 12 months of just taking in data.
and
just
Adam
learning
from
it.
12 months ago, and you think, man, that guy knew so little.
I know, man. It's crazy.
And it scares you when you think about yourself 5 years from now, looking back to now,
yeah.
you know?
Like, well, I'm excited about that, man. I can't wait to be an expert in insurance. But, it's not porting over tech just to port it over and then say they'll figure out how to use it. It's designed specifically for the pain points and opportunities within insurance.
Guys, we are today talking about a potentially transformative new opportunity for all you agents out there. Hope you'll go out and take a look at it. I believe Bradley coined it the Zillow of the insurance industry. So, I was about to ask you, Adam, how do these agents go out to start creating their profiles?
Yeah, www.haveyourcake.com.
I love it.
You can also find me on LinkedIn /Adam Bowe. And I meant what I said, man. DM me, email me, sign up on the website. We're trying to talk to anybody and everybody, buyer, seller, whatever you want. I got time for you right now.
Cool. And I love the fact that you keep using the term right now because, obviously your hope one day is you're going to have to scale a little bit more. And you may not get as much of that Adam white glove service because, you hope you get to 5, 10, 20,000 agencies on here and you're like, oh, we got to hire some more people.
Well, I'd like to remove the need for the white glove.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people say they want, that personal touch on some things, right? But like ultimately you want customer service. Like it'd be great if you could text them your question and they text you it's fixed, right? And then for buying a big thing, you want to talk to somebody. And so we'll always have that personal touch and that white glove where it's needed, but we want to build the products that allow people to self-service and do so confidently. So that's why the right now I think is kind of good underline.
And I'll tell you one thing, Bradley said it a minute ago, but I'll back that up. I think the one thing I find interesting about this too, the more data that you guys collect on buyers and sellers is also going to help when buyers and sellers want to buy and sell relative to pricing. And now you can show that, okay, these, I don't know how you'll do it, but maybe it would be like you don't show the agency name, but these agencies were your size and this particular niche, and this is the
same carrier mix.
Right.
And I mean, I think like Seth's platform becomes really interesting. We're working on an integration with Neon right now, but your ability to market, that's why I push back a little bit on size, market KPIs and performance, and the good of your agency, that can demonstrably impact your value.
For sure.
And so like, man, it's so like that magic moment for me is when an agent either gets the price that they weren't expecting that was over when they're selling, or early when they're growing, right? They can take total control over that growth path.
Sure.
Like if Kate can give you the data, the optionality, and the tools to do that, that's, I get chills thinking about that, man. That's
cool.
awesome.
Guys, we're going to shut this thing down. Thank you so much for being here. Tell them the website one more time.
Yeah, www.haveyourcake.com.
That'll be in the show notes too.
Awesome. Guys, you were listening to the Insurance Guys podcast, and as I end every episode, rewards come from action, not discussion. Get your ass out from behind that desk today. Go out into the big bad world. Make money for your family, for your wife, for your kids' college fund, and for your parents and your in-laws like mine that are struggling out there right now. Go make money for them and help them out. Figure out what your why is and get out there every day and go hit it. Bradley Flowers, I love you.
Thanks,
I
brother.
left it out. Hold on. Go write good business for the companies that you represent and write good business for the agencies that you represent. Bradley Flowers, I love you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Adam.
Adam, I love you.
Man, I got that. I love you. I love you guys too.
Guys, you were listening to the Insurance Guys